Come to me. Come to me.
Yes, here we go folks. The NOSFERATU trailer has finally graced our shores, even though the film is set to release in December. Long has this moment been eagerly awaited by many of you intelligent connoisseurs of highbrow horror, including yours truly. Wow, that was a shameless trick to compliment myself, wasn't it? Moving on. NOSFERATU will be the renowned director Robert Eggers' fourth film into his short but explosive career, and one that would hopefully ignite some well-needed passion stemming from the memories of those atmospheric classical horror pictures, now fused with Eggers' modern-day style of invoking terror and his method of portraying period authenticity. Now, I would say that even though his last film, The Northman, was my least favourite, his three previous films have been outstanding when considering the important details of atmosphere, visual, psychological depth and folkloric influences. He's an extraordinary and visionary director who has proven he can delve deep into our psyche, making us shudder and squirm, all from the power of his filmmaking. All of that being said, why don't we take a look at the first real glimpse of his most recent piece of meticulous craftsmanship, shall we? As we know, NOSFERATU has been a lifelong dream for Eggers, and I've been looking forward to analysing this trailer and expressing my thoughts and feelings. So let's begin. We start with Ellen Hutter, played by Lily Rose Depp, who replaced Anya Taylor-Joy early on for the role. This was certainly a topic of contention among some people, as many felt that Anya should have been his go-to for the films, and well, we can all agree that she is a fantastic actress after all. You'd only need to see The Witch to come to that conclusion. I do understand the upset, however, especially seeing as Depp hasn't starred or co-starred in a project quite of this magnitude before. So it's unknown whether she has the presence and skill to elevate this film to the standard it deserves, but I'm impressed with her very brief performance in this trailer at least, and she was fantastic in The King on Netflix.
Come to me.
For anyone who is coming into NOSFERATU fresh, I will not spoil anything for you, but know that her summoning words of "come to me" have great meaning that is pivotal to the relationship outcome of the protagonist, her husband Thomas Hutter, and the antagonist, Count Orlok or NOSFERATU. Her call to NOSFERATU out of fear and desperation will serve as the deep emotional background of the narrative for this young couple who find themselves tragically involved with the world's most terrifying being. The music is eerie and ominous. It has all the trappings of classical horror composition respectfully brought to life once more for NOSFERATU. I also love how he uses minimalistic scoring to heighten the tension when needed, or when absent of music it feels just as impactful as its presence when dealing with building suspense. The consistency of these techniques in his previous films aligns intrinsically with the psychological and supernatural elements of his narratives within a period setting so damn well. I very much believe that the scoring in this film will be crucial to its success, and all we have right now is a trailer that is starting to impress me and a whole lot of faith. We open with a very detailed and mesmerising aerial shot, which is how most self-respecting movies always love to begin, especially in the 70s. This could either be the fictional town of Wisborg in northern Germany where the Hutters live, or more likely a port town in Romania, as we know that the estate agent Thomas Hutter initially travels to Count Orlok's home in hopes of purchasing one of his properties. This shot has great symbolism as we listen to the foreboding music and observe the diminishing sunset that no doubt portends fearful darkness to come for the population that dwells in this forsaken place. All the set pieces and costumes mixed with the moody lighting and backdrops demonstrate what Eggers does so well in his films. It's his attention to detail and craftsmanship that genuinely speaks to me when he builds these period piece worlds such as The Witch and The Northman. He very elegantly depicts a time we so often romanticise and fantasise about, but then adds layers within it of his very subtle and supernaturally disturbing plot devices that slowly begin to seep out. This shot here is very reminiscent of an early scene in The Witch, where we encountered a diverse group of people in a strange land, all going about their business. It feels alive and instantly fools us into believing what we see on screen. Although the people here are less diverse perhaps, this scene still seems to capture the same authentic qualities that brought integrity and sincerity to The Witch. I love the 19th century uniforms that closely resemble a German Stabsoffizier, or staff officer in English, and the varied mixture of peasantry occupying the frame. How can you not buy any of this? An interesting fact about the filming is that Eggers had a glass company manufacture a special lens for the film to give it a unique filter and aspect ratio to help provide a look of 19th century romanticism. The idea was to shoot the film in colour, but then with the combination of lens and filter, the goal was for the film to look like it was shot in black and white while allowing a few colours, especially blue, to come through into the frame. Now that we are aware of this, I think it complements the amazing efforts of the historical accuracy of set and costume design very well indeed. We start to anticipate a growing connection between Ellen Hutter and the vampire. These sensations emerge from the opening narration to the hauntingly inquisitive questions she asks of the professor.
Does evil come from within us? Or from beyond?
Moments like this afford us a better comprehension of the psychological horror at play in this film, and a greater understanding of the power that will be brought forth by this creature of darkness. Unlike most other modern interpretations of Dracula, where his main source of strength is his physicality and attraction, I believe in Nosferatu his physical strength will be secondary, and his ability to cause psychological pain with control and manipulation will be his primary weapon. However, unlike Dracula, who has always been seen to have an allure with women, whether through seduction or the use of female vampires to seduce Jonathan Harker in, Bram Stoker's story, Nosferatu will more likely have a psychological reason for tormenting Ellen that sees him viewing her as a threat to his power and goals, rather than her being an object he lusts after. And here he is, what Michael Caine is to Christopher Nolan, Willem Dafoe, aka Max Schreck, may be to Robert Eggers, one can hope, and this gives me great joy. I recently sat down to watch Shadow of the Vampire from 2000, which is a movie about the making of 1922's Nosferatu, but with a twist, and I had a great time with it. If anyone hasn't seen it by now, then you absolutely should. Dafoe having played the vampire so well, or perhaps a little too well you could say, it's only fitting that he becomes the professor in the latest adaptation of one of the earliest horror pictures ever made, making the original a staggering 102 years old as I speak. Well, it would appear Thomas has arrived at the Carpathian Mountains in Romania to visit a landlord who might have a few dark secrets in the closet, if we are to judge his isolated residence and sinister surroundings. Notice the lens and filters we spoke about earlier coming into full effect in this hauntingly beautiful shot that boasts impeccable cinematography to come. For me, this is perfectly atmospheric and rich in mystery and melancholy. Much like the Impressionist paintings of the 19th century that Eggers was also heavily inspired by when visualising his Nosferatu. These paintings were known for adding layers of meaning and emotional impact, evoking feelings of nostalgia, longing, or existential contemplation. And it all transforms into glorious motion for us here. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling quite overwhelmed by Eggers' version of Nosferatu based on what we've been allowed to see so far. He announced this project was his toughest shoot to date, which is a statement made more understandable the more I see of this trailer. We've seen something akin to these displays of castle entrances and hallways that are consistently overdone in the discount department of Hollywood. Whether it's the Underworld franchise or your favourite medieval fantasy show, only here do these stunning shots have a sense of urgency and reverence to them, quietly warning us to be afraid. Nicholas Hoult is playing Thomas Hutter straight from his role in the Dracula movie Renfield. I haven't seen it, so I won't comment, but I can imagine a vastly different performance was required for this picture, and one that Hoult is more than capable of, as most would agree. Every detail in this trailer, even down to the smallest engraving or layer of dust, makes the place and all of its belongings look realistically old and almost like it has just been discovered. The coffin here looks ancient and authentic, like something that belongs in a museum. I have to give a big shout out to the design crew who worked meticulously behind the scenes to create these elements that add so much life to the film, and also probably great immersion for all the actors involved to harness their craft to better effect. I am starting to wonder if Willem Dafoe has it written in his contract that he must be naked for a certain portion of the film he's in, possibly a negotiable aspect his agent has to barter with on his behalf, but he appears to be doing some form of homework before he attempts to seek out and destroy the dreaded creature. The Professor is said to be a vampire hunter of sorts in Eggers' Nosferatu, therefore I do wonder if he knows exactly how to kill the monster. In the original, this knowledge was restricted to a book that ended up in the hands of Ellen Hutter, making her one of the first female characters with the ability to stop evil. This was one hell of a role reversal for those days, one that saw her as less of a tool for the male protagonist to use or save in order to defeat the enemy. Sadly, this is another component overused in many modern films that has all but lost its meaning, for the most part anyway.
It is coming.
And there we have the fantastic booming voice of Ralph Ineson to the right of the frame, who just by his narration alone adds deep levels of flavour and gravitas to any period film he's a part of. His distinctly expressive voice introduces so much weight to his scenes, and I look forward to his work in NOSFERATU as Dr. Wilhelm Sievers. Wilhelm is a hospital director in the German city of Wisborg, and a friend of Frederick Hardin. Frederick on the left is a rich German merchant played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, who I believe is our next James Bond. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one, please. But again, I'm very excited to see all of this cast work together, as the chemistry could be quite riveting.
He is coming to us.
Rats, lots of rats. Now there is an unescapable truth to NOSFERATU that isn't often explored in Bram Stoker's Dracula, I would say. It's important to consider that when F.W. Murnau's NOSFERATU came out in 1922, it was only a few years after the Spanish flu had already killed millions worldwide. Therefore, it isn't so far-fetched to imagine that this pandemic most likely had some major impact on how Murnau not only wanted to portray the vampire as a grotesque creature, but also within the vampire's ambition was the desire to unleash a global plague that would devour anything in its path. This is very much contextualised in the incredibly sinister yet spellbinding establishing shot of Wisborg, as we see a vast shadow cleverly visualise Count Orlok's deathly grip that he seeks to have over the city and its people's fate. Unless Orlok in his spare time has been practising his arts and crafts and has built himself a charming miniature of his most desirable town. We get to see many snippets of Wisborg in the trailer, and they've done a great job of capturing a 19th century wintry vibe that surrounds the historically accurate architecture. You can distinctly feel the biting winds and the smell of smoke from chimneys under the inky black sky, and I get a sense of unspoken tension and anticipation of something sinister approaching among the townsfolk. Evidently, people are starting to die, and perhaps there will be some form of revolt against this new evil that has entered their lives by the gathering torches and pitchfork militia we can see. At this point, the trailer looks like it is progressing quite fast into what becomes a vampire hunt, and you could say that the stakes appear to be quite high, yes? Finally, we get our first glimpse of Count Orlok, who has been described by the director as looking like a dead Transylvanian nobleman. We don't see him for long, and if you blink, you've missed it. However, this vampire design looks wonderfully unique in its subtleties, but just as deadly as you might imagine, and performed most elegantly in style as he proceeds to bite down on the victim's neck. Notice that Eggers has correctly decided to keep NOSFERATU's most prominent feature, and that of course is his elongated fingers that seem almost alien here, especially when matched with the deathly texture of his discoloured skin seen all over his body. Now for the money shot, folks. Am I alone in thinking all of this just looks too good to be true? How Bill Skarsgård was to be transformed into the Count has been playing on my mind for some time now. With all due respect to his brilliant work in his previous creature feature roles, I fear that some of those images had seeped into my thoughts when trying to visualise how he would be presented in this film. I mean, I didn't picture him as a clown per se, but still. This shot does so much justice to the myth, the folklore and the primal terror NOSFERATU should evoke in us. I love how the very prominent and extending upper orbital bone cast a shadow over the eye, concealing his gaze and dehumanising him even further. These minimalistic values once again heighten our imagination, triggering some fear as we try to fill in the gaps. It's also worth noting that a receding hairline is frightening enough when it happens to us, but it complements Orlok's bony forehead in such a freaky manner that it increases the horror of this image quite nicely. As the trailer nears its end, we are shown a book that depicts a heptagram on its cover, which is used in Christianity to symbolise the 7 days of creation, and sometimes became a traditional symbol for warding off evil as well. This may well be the book I spoke of earlier, containing essential knowledge on how to bring about the vampire's undoing. I guess we'll have to go see the film to find out what it says, although I doubt most of its contents will be a spoiler these days. This final shot of Count Orlok might be the most impressive of the whole trailer. It's like, where to begin? There are connotations of paganism, mysticism and magic when I stare at these dark shapes. I'm no expert when it comes to all the details of folklore, much of the literature on vampires, and the stories inspired by them, but many elements of this last shot are hauntingly entrancing, like a moth to a flame, and do inspire me to see this film. Firstly, how increasingly terrifying is it when all we can see are their silhouettes? Then there are the many parallels to consider when it comes to the wolves standing obediently next to their master here. People often see werewolves and vampires as intertwined, as both are seen as creatures of the night in folklore. But wolves symbolise the wild and predatory aspects of nature that resonate with the very essence of a vampire so perfectly. I believe that Dracula had full control and dominion over such beasts, who served as agents and spies for him in the field. In NOSFERATU, there was only ever a connection to wolves in the sense that he had shared their eerie and predatory nature. Therefore, seeing them standing with Orlok in the hallway makes me wonder how deep his supernatural connections to these nocturnal animals will go in Eggers' adaptation. Just to finish off the trailer, in perfect style I might add, is the classic screen shake while the title is displayed. This was sometimes a result of technical limitations very early on in films, but was also a stylistic choice intended to add a sense of unease and instability right from the beginning of the film. It's a great throwback to a bygone era and the perfect title sequence to include here. This whole trailer honestly feels like a love letter to those fundamental classic horror pictures that established a solid foundation for everything that came later. And if you hadn't guessed it by now, I loved this trailer. I wish more than anything, come December, this film exceeds my expectations after being blown away by what I've just watched here. Which it may very well do unless we have just seen all the best bits, I hope not. But we have a steadfast director, unwavering and uncorrupted by Hollywood thus far. We have a great cast and potentially an interesting script variation based on a century-old story. So fingers crossed, let me know what you think in the comments and try to remain entertained in the meantime. See you next time, folks.